When you lay your body down, but the thinking refuses to follow. Sleep researchers call this state hyperarousal. The body has spent its energy, but the mind is still scanning for something it has not been told it can stop watching. The part most people are not told, your subconscious, is not failing to let you sleep. It is succeeding at a job you forgot to give it back. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Tonight, the part of you that has been keeping watch will be turned toward, gently, to ask what it is still guarding and why. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're resting in a room where the lights have dimmed enough that the watchman can finally hear his own breathing. And now we begin. There is a particular quality to the kind of tiredness that does not turn into sleep. The body has clearly given up, but something underneath it has not. Sleep scientists call this physiologic hyperarousal, a state where the autonomic nervous system continues running a low-grade alert even after the conscious mind has tried to rest. In research published over the past 2 years, people with chronic insomnia show measurably higher nighttime cortisol, heart rate variability that does not soften, and brain regions that stay partially active when sleep would normally be taking over. The body is exhausted. The internal watchman is not. What feels like a personal failure of willpower is, more often, a nervous system that has not yet been given permission to lower its guard. You may have noticed that the moment you decide to sleep is sometimes the exact moment your mind decides to start working. Researchers studying pre-sleep cognition describe this as the cognitive arousal response. The brain reading no more external demands as a window to finally process everything it postponed. During the day, your conscious mind is occupied with tasks. At night, when the noise drops, the unfinished things rise to fill the silence. This is not restlessness. This is a deferred cognitive load being honored. Late, awkwardly, and without your permission, the mind is not betraying you. It is finishing what the day did not give it room to do. It is simply working on a different shift than the one you scheduled. If you have ever felt that some part of you is on duty while another part is trying to rest, you are describing something neuroscientists now study under the name local sleep. Brain imaging shows that during insomnia, certain regions, especially those linked to threat monitoring and self-evaluation, remain in a wake-like pattern even while other regions drift towards sleep. Sleep is not a single switch. It is an agreement between many regions of the brain, and any one of them can refuse. What you have been calling "I cannot sleep" is, more accurately, part of me is still working. That part has a reason. It is just one you have not yet been invited to hear. The subconscious does not understand the phrase "go to sleep." It understands states. It reads your body, your breath, your environment, and your unfinished business, and decides, on its own, whether the conditions are safe enough to release control. Researchers in affective neuroscience have shown that subcortical structures like the amygdala and the brainstem regulate sleep onset far more than your conscious intention does. You can want sleep with every part of your conscious mind and still be denied entry. Sleep is not a decision. It is a permission granted by a quieter, older system that does not take orders from words alone. There is a reason the mind grows loudest when the room grows quietest. And it has nothing to do with the night being against you. Sensory psychologists call this the silence amplification effect. When external input drops, internal input is no longer drowned out. The thoughts were there all day. The quiet simply gave them volume. This is not your subconscious turning on at bedtime. It is your subconscious finally being audible after 12 hours of being shouted over. What you are hearing is not new. It is what was always playing, only now, for the first time today, without competition for the airwaves. If you have ever caught yourself solving a problem at 2 in the morning that you could not solve at 2 in the afternoon, you have met the subconscious at its working hour. Researchers in cognitive consolidation have found that the brain reorganizes unfinished mental material during the transition into sleep. And if that material feels unfinished, the transition itself stalls. The subconscious treats unresolved problems as live threads, and live threads ask to be held. You are not failing to rest. You are holding open a window that the mind was hoping you would close. A window the day was too busy to close for you. Sometimes the body lies down before the mind has agreed it is safe to. Polyvagal informed research. A framework still being developed but increasingly supported, suggests that the autonomic nervous system reads safety from cues like breath rhythm, facial muscle softness, and ambient predictability. If those cues are missing, the body can be horizontal and exhausted, and the system will still register the situation as incomplete. What lives in that gap between body and nervous system is not weakness. It is a watchman waiting for a signal you may not know you have been quietly withholding all evening long. You may have lived through nights where the harder you tried to sleep, the more impossible sleep became. And what you were experiencing has a name. Sleep researchers call it paradoxical insomnia or sleep effort syndrome. The conscious effort to fall asleep activates the sympathetic nervous system, which is the exact opposite of what sleep requires. Trying to sleep, in a real sense, is the activity that prevents it. The mind cannot command itself into rest. It can only stop standing in rest's way. And that is a much quieter, much slower, and much harder kind of act than trying ever felt like. There is something the subconscious does at the threshold of sleep that few people are told about. It conducts a quiet inventory. Neurologists studying hypnagogia have observed that the brain, in the seconds before sleep, briefly scans for anything that feels unfinished, unsafe, or unresolved. If the scan returns nothing alarming, sleep proceeds. If it returns a flag, the system pauses to check. What feels like sudden wakefulness right before drifting off is, in many cases, the subconscious finding one item it forgot to put away, and refusing to close the door until it has found a place for that one thing. And this is only the beginning of what the subconscious reveals about the way sleeplessness actually works. That it is not the absence of rest, but the presence of a guard who has not yet been told the shift is over. What we will see, fact by fact, is that the watchman in you is not your enemy. The watchman is something else, something the rest of tonight will slowly explain. In the only language he has ever spoken, the language of what he is still holding for you while you tried to sleep, and the language of why he believes the holding still matters more than the rest you are trying to take from him tonight. If you have ever felt that your mind starts a conversation with itself only when the lights go out, you have met what attention researchers call the default mode network. This is the system that activates when external focus drops. And one of its main jobs is reviewing unresolved emotional and social material at night, with no distractions. The default mode network gets full bandwidth. It does not know it is bedtime. It only knows there is finally space to think about what was set aside. The mental noise is not malfunction. It is a system doing exactly what it was built to do, at exactly the wrong moment for sleep. You may have noticed that the moment your head touches the pillow is sometimes the moment a memory you had not thought about all day suddenly returns. Memory consolidation researchers have observed that the transition into sleep is also the transition into emotional memory reactivation. The brain begins reviewing the day's emotional residue, which can include events from earlier that were not fully processed. What feels like an ambush by your own mind is, in fact, a scheduled review. The mind is not picking on you. It is finishing a job whose start time you did not get to choose. On a calendar you were never shown. There is a particular kind of restlessness that lives in the body but originates somewhere else. And it is becoming better understood. Studies on somatic anxiety show that unprocessed emotional material can express itself through muscle tension, shallow breathing, and a heart rate that refuses to settle, even when nothing visibly wrong is present. The body becomes the storage room for what the mind did not have time to hold. At night, the storage room is the only room left. What feels like physical inability to relax is sometimes emotional material asking for a different address, one the body cannot offer alone. If you have ever wondered why some nights you fall asleep instantly and others you cannot, even when the day looked the same on the outside, the answer may lie in something called allostatic load. This is the cumulative weight of stress the nervous system has been carrying, not just from today, but from the days before it. The system can carry quite a lot, until it cannot. When the load crosses a threshold, sleep onset becomes harder, even on a quiet evening. Tonight's restlessness may not be about tonight at all. It may be the weight of a longer week finally being noticed by a body that ran out of room to ignore it. Sometimes the subconscious refuses to let you sleep because it has learned, somewhere, that sleep is the moment something unwanted happens. Researchers studying trauma-related insomnia have found that the brain can encode the act of sleeping itself as a vulnerability. If you have ever lived through a period when nighttime carried real difficulty, illness, instability, grief, a difficult environment, the nervous system may still be running an old protocol that treats bedtime as a moment requiring vigilance. This is not weakness. It is the watchman remembering a job he was once given, and not yet being told he can finally put it down for the night. There is a phenomenon in sleep medicine called conditioned arousal, and once you understand it, much of your bedroom may make sudden sense. Over time, the brain can learn to associate the bed itself with the experience of not sleeping. The longer you have struggled, the more strongly the brain pairs lying down with being alert. This is one reason why the same bed that used to invite sleep can later seem to repel it. The bed has not changed. The association has. The subconscious learns by repetition, and it can learn the wrong lesson without ever asking your permission to do so. You may have noticed that worry about not sleeping is often louder than the original worry that kept you awake. Cognitive behavioral research on insomnia identifies a feedback loop called sleep performance anxiety, where the fear of not sleeping becomes a larger source of arousal than whatever started the wakefulness in the first place. The mind, trying to protect you from a bad night, generates the conditions that produce one. This is one of the cruelest design features of the worried mind. It is not malice. It is misplaced care from a system that has not yet been shown a better way to help you through the dark. Researchers in interoception, the brain's ability to read the body's internal state, have found that people with chronic sleep difficulty often have heightened sensitivity to subtle bodily signals at night. A normal heartbeat sounds loud. A normal breath sounds shallow. A normal warmth sounds like fever. The system is scanning a body that is doing nothing wrong and reporting everything as a possible signal. The body is calm. The reading of the body is not. What feels like physical disturbance is, sometimes, an oversensitive interpreter, translating ordinary sensations into language the watchman treats as cause for concern. Sometimes, what keeps you awake is something you have agreed to feel only later, and later arrives at bedtime. Psychologists call this emotional avoidance, and it has a measurable effect on sleep onset latency. When difficult emotional material is set aside during the day, it does not disappear. It waits. At night, when the day's distractions stop, what was postponed shows up, asking to be felt now. This is not malfunction. It is honesty, arriving on a delayed train. The subconscious is finishing the conversation the day did not allow, and refusing to leave the platform until the conversation finds someone willing to listen. There is something the body does when it senses an unfinished thought, and you may have felt it many times. The breath becomes shorter. The chest holds slight tension. A subtle alertness rises behind the eyes. Researchers studying the link between cognition and respiration have found that the body actively shifts physiology to match the cognitive state. If the mind has not finished, the body waits with it. If the mind softens, the body follows. The relationship is two-way, but the mind almost always leads. To soften the body, you can offer the mind something to soften toward, rather than ordering it to stop. You may have heard that the subconscious does not understand no. What researchers in implicit cognition have shown is more specific. The subconscious processes images and sensations first, and negation as a secondary instruction. If you say, "Do not think about the meeting tomorrow," the subconscious has already produced the meeting, and now has to work against itself to dismiss it. At bedtime, when conscious control loosens, the dismissal often fails. What you tried to push away becomes louder than what you tried to keep close. The harder you push, the more vivid the thing you were pushing against becomes in your inner room. There is a quiet rule the nervous system follows that almost no one is taught. It cannot relax against your wishes, but it also cannot relax against its own. If the subconscious is holding something it considers alive, no decision from the conscious mind will override that holding. Sleep medicine has long recognized that forcing relaxation tends to produce its opposite. The system can only release what it has been allowed to consider, acknowledge, and put down. You do not negotiate with the subconscious by demand. You negotiate by listening, by asking, and by patience that the daytime mind almost never has. Sometimes the part of you that will not sleep is the part of you that does not yet feel heard during the day. Therapists working with sleep-related anxiety often find that nighttime wakefulness is the only window in which certain feelings finally have room to exist. The day is full of obligations. The morning will be too. Night is the only address those feelings have. If you have spent the day moving through tasks without checking in with yourself, the check-in does not get skipped. It just relocates. The subconscious does not lose what was unspoken. It only changes the hour at which it speaks. You may have noticed that the thoughts that keep you awake are rarely random. They often cluster around a small number of recurring themes. A relationship, a financial concern, a regret, a decision. Researchers in repetitive negative thinking call this perseverative cognition, and it has been linked to both insomnia and elevated cortisol. The mind is not generating noise. It is circling a specific concern that has not yet been resolved or accepted. The repetition is not the problem. The repetition is the signal pointing toward what wants attention from you, and pointing more loudly each time the attention does not arrive. What 25 facts begin to reveal is not a series of separate difficulties, but a single pattern. The subconscious has been keeping watch over something you have not yet been told it is keeping watch over. The watchman is not interested in your schedule. He is interested in something he believes still needs guarding. Tonight, the next phase begins not by silencing him, but by asking what he is guarding for. Because the answer to that question is also the answer to why your nights have felt this way. And that is where the next arc begins, with the slow turning of attention toward what the watchman has been guarding, instead of the louder, older effort to make him stop. Right now, the part of you that has been keeping watch is doing something it does every time the room finally quiets. It is listening, not to the room, to you, checking whether the silence outside means it can finally lower its volume, or whether something inside still asks to be guarded. You don't have to tell it to stop. It will not stop until it has been heard. What you have not been told yet is what happens when the watchman has been holding the same concern for so long he no longer remembers that he is allowed to set it down. That's where the next part begins. Now we continue. The subconscious does not separate old from current the way the conscious mind does. Memory researchers have found that emotional memory, especially distressing emotional memory, can remain biologically active long after the conscious mind has filed it as resolved. A worry from 5 years ago can produce the same nighttime arousal as a worry from yesterday, because the subconscious files emotional intensity, not chronology. What feels like an old concern that has been bothering you for too long is, to the subconscious, simply a concern still in the open file. The watchman does not check the date on what he is holding. There is a measurable effect in sleep research called the first night effect. When sleeping in a new environment, half of the brain remains slightly more active than the other. Studies show this is the same pattern seen in certain marine mammals. The brain is treating the new room as a place that requires partial vigilance. What this tells you is not about new rooms. It is about how easily the watchman is activated by anything unfamiliar. A small change in environment, real or felt, is enough for the system to keep one eye open through the night. You may have noticed that your sleep is worse the night before, something difficult, even when you feel calm. Researchers studying anticipatory arousal have shown that the nervous system prepares for tomorrow during tonight. If tomorrow contains anything the subconscious considers high stakes, sleep is reduced, not as a punishment, but as a preparation. The body is conserving alertness for the morning. This is one of the oldest features of the system, dating back long before there were beds or clocks. It does not know that you would prefer the alertness be saved for later in the day. The subconscious is unusually responsive to ambiguity. Decision researchers have found that unresolved questions, "Did I say the wrong thing earlier? What if this happens tomorrow?" produce more nighttime cognitive activity than resolved difficulties. Even when the resolved difficulties were objectively heavier, ambiguity is, to the mind, an open door. Open doors invite attention. What keeps you awake is sometimes not the weight of a thing, but the unsettled quality of it. A small uncertainty can outwork a large but settled fact. Every time. In the late hours of the night, there is a region of the brain called the medial prefrontal cortex that is involved in self-referential thinking. The loop of thoughts about you, about your day, about how you are doing. In people with insomnia, fMRI studies show that this region remains active longer into the night than in people who sleep easily. The subconscious is not generating problems for you to solve. It is keeping the conversation about you open, because the day did not give that conversation a place to land. The conversation will continue until somewhere does. Sometimes the subconscious refuses to release into sleep because it has linked sleep with loss. Therapists working with grief observe that nighttime can become an avoided territory after the loss of someone who slept beside you, or whose absence is most felt in the quiet hours. The system is not refusing rest. It is refusing the specific kind of solitude that sleep requires. What looks like insomnia is sometimes the body declining to enter a place where the absence is most clearly felt, and where there is no daytime activity to fill the shape that absence leaves. Researchers studying nocturnal cognitive style have found that some people tend to think in worst-case scenarios at night, while thinking in measured terms during the day. This is not personality. This is the cognitive shift that happens when the prefrontal cortex begins to wind down. The brain's evaluative regions soften before its emotional regions do, leaving a window in which feelings are loud and proportionality is quiet. What sounds catastrophic at 2 a.m. sounds manageable at noon, not because the situation changed, but because your interpretive equipment is operating at different volumes. You may have noticed that bringing a worry to bed is rarely productive, even when the day has not given it any other time. Cognitive psychologists have found that the bed thinking state has access to emotional memory, but limited access to executive problem solving. The mind can dwell, but it cannot decide. The watchman can name the threat, but he cannot resolve it. The result is repetition without progress. This is not a defect of the worry. It is a defect of the location. The worry is real. The bed is simply not its workplace, and never was. There is a phenomenon called sleep state misperception, where people experience long stretches of light sleep as full wakefulness. EEG studies confirm that the brain is actually sleeping. but the subjective experience is that nothing is happening. The subconscious, in this case, is doing its job. The conscious mind is just not getting the report. What you remember as not sleeping at all may, biologically, have been hours of partial rest. The watchman is on duty, but the body has not gone uncared for, even when the experience left no clear record of the care it received. Sometimes, the mind keeps watch over something the body has already started to forget. Pain researchers have observed that the central nervous system can continue to monitor for an old pain long after the body has healed. And this can extend into nighttime arousal. The system was once helpful. The system has not yet been told to stand down. This is one of the most patient and most stubborn forms of the watchman, the kind that is guarding against something that may no longer exist, in a body that has quietly moved on without him. You may have felt your body relax in stages: feet, legs, chest, yaw, and then noticed that the mind did not follow. Researchers in progressive muscle release have observed that the mind and body do not always relax in sync. The body can release, and the subconscious can still hold. This is one of the most disorienting experiences of insomnia. You did the right thing. You did it well. And it still was not enough, because the body was not the part that was waiting for something. The watching part was waiting for something else entirely. There is a particular type of nighttime thought that returns no matter how many times you try to set it aside. And it has a name. Researchers in intrusive cognition call it post-suppression rebound. The act of pushing a thought away increases its return rate, particularly when cognitive resources are depleted, which is the exact condition of the mind at bedtime. The harder you push, the louder the return. The subconscious is not punishing you. It is following a physical law. The way out is not through more pushing. The way out is through a different kind of attention. If you have ever wondered why your worst thoughts seem to choose the worst hour, the answer involves the circadian shape of cortisol. Cortisol, the body's primary stress signal, does not stay constant through the night. It begins to rise in the early morning hours, sometimes as early as 3 a.m., to prepare the body for waking. If the subconscious has unfinished material, the rising cortisol amplifies it. What feels like an emergency at 3 a.m. is often a normal thought magnified by a normal hormone. The thought is not larger. The volume just turned up briefly, on its own schedule. Sleep researchers have observed that the boundary between wakefulness and sleep is permeable in both directions. Just as conscious thoughts can delay sleep, subtle shifts towards sleep can pull the conscious mind back into awareness, particularly if there is something the subconscious considers unresolved. Each near-sleep moment becomes a checkpoint. If something flags, the system returns to alertness for another round. This is why people often describe almost falling asleep repeatedly without actually crossing over. The crossings are real. The reasons for returning are also real, and waiting to be acknowledged. What 40 facts make visible is something most sleeplessness does not announce. Your nights have been carrying the questions your days were not built to hold. The watchman is not the problem. The watchman is the storage. He is the place where the unfinished business of a busy life has been quietly accumulating, night after night. while the conscious mind moved on to the next day. The second half of tonight follows what happens when the storage finally gets the chance to be opened. Read, and slowly, gently emptied. You've been listening for a while now. Take one slow breath. Your subconscious has been doing exactly what it was built to do, and so have you. By giving it this quiet to be heard in, we'll keep going together. Gently. There is a quiet rule that runs underneath most sleeplessness, and once you see it, much of the difficulty becomes legible. The subconscious does not respond to logic. It responds to safety. Cognitive behavioral research on insomnia has shown that explaining away a worry rarely produces sleep, but introducing genuine cues of safety, predictable rhythm, slowed breath, dimmed light, kind self-talk, does. The system was not waiting for an argument. It was waiting for an environment it could trust. What persuades the watchman is not what is said. It is what is felt around him. You may have noticed that some nights, even after you have addressed the obvious worries, sleep still does not come. This is because the subconscious is not always tracking the worry you think it is tracking. Therapists working with anxiety often find that the conscious worry is a stand-in, a more manageable version of a deeper one. The deeper one is harder to name, and so harder to address. The mind has been holding the placeholder, while the actual concern waits underneath, quieter and older, asking for someone to come find it. Researchers in attachment psychology have found that early experiences of being soothed or not being soothed shape the way the nervous system handles transitions throughout life, including the transition into sleep. People who learned very early that they had to put themselves to sleep alone sometimes carry that lesson into adulthood. The system is not unable to settle. It is simply unaccompanied. What looks like difficulty falling asleep is sometimes an old loneliness that nighttime has the unfortunate privilege of remembering more clearly than any other hour of the day can. There is a phenomenon in trauma-informed sleep research where the body cannot enter deep sleep even when it is exhausted, because deep sleep requires a level of muscle release that the system is unwilling to grant. Trauma specialists have observed that protective muscle bracing, usually invisible during the day, becomes visible at night. When the body is asked to let go, the system is not refusing rest. It is refusing vulnerability, and it has its reasons, which may not yet have been spoken aloud to the parts of you that could finally understand them with the kindness they have been waiting for. Sometimes the subconscious is keeping watch over something it cannot name. Researchers studying somatic memory have found that the body can hold a state of alertness without a corresponding conscious memory. The protection is intact. The reason for the protection has faded. This is one of the most disorienting forms of nighttime tension. The sense that something is wrong, with no available story for what it is. The watchman is guarding. The conscious mind has not been given the script. Both are doing their best with incomplete information, and both deserve patience. You may have wondered why some nights your worries feel personal and other nights they feel abstract. Researchers in emotional regulation have found that fatigue itself changes the texture of thought. As the prefrontal cortex tires, the boundary between specific concern and global concern softens. A small worry about tomorrow can blur into a large worry about your life. This is not a sign of how things truly are. It is the brain's processing equipment running on a reduced budget. The worry is real. The scope it has expanded into may not be. Only a tired interpreter, doing tired work. Sleep scientists have documented that the brain can sleep in pieces. During chronic insomnia, some regions enter sleep states, while others remain in light wakefulness. A pattern visible on EEG. This is why insomnia rarely feels like total wakefulness. It feels like incomplete sleep. The body is partially resting. The mind is partially present. Neither is fully on. This is not failure. This is a compromised but ongoing attempt at recovery. Your system trying its best with the materials it has, in the conditions it has been given to work with tonight. Researchers in sleep hygiene have observed that many of the behaviors people adopt to fix insomnia, checking the clock, calculating remaining hours, tracking sleep, quietly increase arousal. The act of monitoring sleep, paradoxically, prevents it. The subconscious receives the message that sleep is high stakes, and high stakes is incompatible with letting go. Tracking your sleep too closely is, in this sense, a way of guarding it from coming. The watchman cannot stand down while the conscious mind is asking him to file reports on whether he is standing down yet. There is a particular kind of insomnia that does not feel like wakefulness at all. It feels like a kind of waiting. You are not thinking about anything specific. You are not anxious. You are just not asleep. Researchers describe this as quiet wakefulness. And it is often the result of an unresolved emotional state that has not yet found its expression. The mind is not generating noise. It is waiting for permission to feel something it has not yet been told it is allowed to feel. In the only room that ever offers that permission, halfway through tonight, what has become clear is this: the subconscious is not preventing sleep. It is asking, in the only language it has, for what it has not been given a chance to say. The question the second half follows is harder than the first half asked. If the watchman has been holding something for so long, and you finally turn toward him, what does it take for him to feel he has been truly heard? Because the answer is also the answer to why some nights, finally, the door opens. What just opened? The question of whether the watchman in you can ever feel heard enough to set the watch down is not only a psychology question. You may be carrying both sides of that today. The part of you that has been keeping vigil, and the part of you that is tired of being kept vigilant. Not resolved into each other, just present in the same body, at the same hour. The second half of tonight follows what happens when those two parts stop arguing with each other. Feel your jaw. Let it be wherever it is. Now we continue. The subconscious, when it is heard, behaves differently. Therapists working with insomnia have noticed that simply naming the concern the mind is holding, gently, without trying to solve it, often reduces nighttime arousal more effectively than any sleep technique. The system was not asking for a solution. It was asking for acknowledgement. Naming the watchman's concern is not the same as resolving it. It is, however, the moment the watchman first realizes someone else has finally noticed what he has been doing all this time. Alone. There is a difference between sleep and surrender, and the subconscious knows it. Sleep researchers have observed that the final transition into sleep involves a particular kind of letting go. Not falling, but releasing. The body cannot be commanded into that release. It can only be invited, and the invitation is accepted only when the system feels nothing alive is being abandoned. Sleep, in this sense, is not what you do. It is what happens when the watchman agrees that nothing he was guarding asks for him anymore tonight. You may have noticed that some nights, after you finally name what was bothering you, sleep comes quickly, not because the problem was solved, but because the problem was witnessed. Researchers in self-compassion have found that the simple act of acknowledging difficulty, without dismissing or amplifying it, calms autonomic arousal. The body trusts a witness. The body distrusts a denial. The subconscious is not picky about who witnesses, only that someone does. And often, the someone it has been waiting for is you, finally arriving with no agenda. There is a quality of attention that the nervous system recognizes as safe, and it is not the kind of attention most people have been trained to give themselves. Researchers in mindful self-attention have shown that observing one's own thoughts with curiosity rather than judgment shifts the brain into a parasympathetic state. The mind softens not because it is told to, but because it senses it is being met without criticism. The watchman, when treated kindly, becomes a different kind of presence. Less alarm, more companion, slowly setting his shoulders down. Sometimes the subconscious has been carrying a belief about you that you have not consciously held in years. Psychologists call these residual implicit beliefs, internalized assumptions that operate beneath awareness, often formed long before the conscious mind was capable of evaluating them. These beliefs can shape what the subconscious considers safe enough for sleep. A childhood belief that staying alert keeps you safe can produce adult insomnia, even when the original threat has long since faded. The watchman is following an old script. He has not yet been handed a new one. Researchers in inner conflict have observed that one of the most reliable causes of nighttime wakefulness is unspoken disagreement with oneself. Two parts of you, holding opposite needs at the same time, can keep the system locked in a low-grade activation that prevents sleep. The conscious mind may have chosen one side. The subconscious is still holding the other. Both are still active. Neither has agreed to be quiet. The watchman cannot rest while the room he is in is still negotiating the terms. Sleep is not a single act. It is a sequence of agreements between many systems: circadian, autonomic, hormonal, cognitive, emotional. Researchers studying the multidimensional model of sleep have found that disruption in any one system can prevent the others from completing their parts. This is why insomnia has so many shapes. Each shape reflects a different agreement that did not get signed. The subconscious is not refusing to sleep. It is refusing to sleep until one specific agreement has been quietly made between you and what you are carrying. Therapists working with chronic insomnia have observed that progress often arrives through a different door than the one most people knock on. Instead of working harder to sleep, the practice becomes working softer to be present. The system begins to trust the conscious mind more, because the conscious mind has stopped issuing commands. The watchman, accustomed to being argued with, begins to relax in the presence of someone who is finally just listening. Sleep follows the listening, not the asking, not the demanding, not the trying. There is a moment, in the practice of being with oneself before sleep, when something subtle shifts. Researchers in interoceptive awareness describe this as a recalibration. The body's signals are no longer interpreted as alarms, but as information. The same heartbeat that felt loud now feels alive. The same breath that felt shallow now feels honest. Nothing in the body has changed. The relationship to the body has, and the subconscious, watching the relationship, takes a different position than it did before, quietly settling toward the floor. You may have noticed that there is a difference between the mind that has been told to be quiet and the mind that has chosen to be quiet. The first is a forced silence. The second is a settled one. The subconscious can read the difference. Researchers in volitional regulation have found that imposed calm produces only surface relaxation, while chosen calm reaches deeper, slower systems. The watchman responds to authenticity above almost everything else. He has been listening for it, beneath every command, all along. Sometimes the system that has been keeping you awake is the same system that has been keeping you safe in ways you have not always recognized. Researchers in adaptive psychophysiology have described nighttime alertness as a protective signal, one that originated in legitimate need, and persists because it was never given a different role. The watchman is not a malfunction. He is a function that has outlived its assignment. Releasing him is not removing him. It is reassigning him to a quieter task, one that does not ask him to stand all night long. There is a particular sentence, observed by clinicians, that can shift the subconscious's stance towards sleep more effectively than nearly any other. It is safe enough to rest now, not go to sleep, not stop thinking, not relax. Researchers in self-directed neuroplasticity have found that this kind of permissive, present-tense language reaches the subconscious in ways command-based language cannot. The system trusts permission more than it trusts pressure. The watchman lowers his shoulders when he hears that rest is allowed, not demanded of him. You may have wondered why two people in the same situation can have such different sleep experiences. Researchers studying individual differences in sleep reactivity have found that some nervous systems are more easily destabilized by stress than others. And this is partly genetic, partly developmental, partly historical. The subconscious watchman in some people is older, more experienced, and more careful by temperament. This is not a defect. It is a calibration. And it deserves to be met with the patience that its long history quietly requires. There is something the subconscious does when it begins to feel truly safe that researchers in sleep onset have observed repeatedly. The breath deepens without instruction. Heart rate slows without instruction. Muscles release without instruction. The system arrives at rest the way water finds its level, naturally, when nothing is in the way. The work, then, is not to produce rest. The work is to stop standing in front of it. The body knows the way home. It only ever needed the door clear. We now understand that sleep is not a destination you reach by trying harder. It is a state you arrive at by trying differently. Researchers in psychophysiological insomnia have shown that effort-based approaches reliably produce worse outcomes than acceptance-based approaches. The system that resists pressure responds to permission. The system that resists silencing responds to listening. The watchman is not won over by argument. He is won over by patience. This shift in approach is one of the deepest moves the practice of better sleep ever makes. Therapists trained in internal family systems have observed that nighttime restlessness often quiets when the part of you that is keeping watch is treated as a presence to befriend rather than a problem to suppress. The watchman, asked respectfully what he is guarding for, will often answer, and once he has answered, his urgency softens. The thing he was holding does not disappear. It simply has a witness, and witnessed things, more often than guarded things, can finally be allowed to settle. Sleep researchers have observed that the body's transition into deep sleep follows a specific neurochemical sequence. Dropping cortisol, rising adenosine, increasing melatonin, slowing brain waves. None of these can be willed. All of them can be allowed. The role of the conscious mind in this sequence is not to make sleep happen. It is to stop interfering with the chemistry that is already trying to. The system was designed to sleep. The work is to stop holding it back from doing what it knows. You may have noticed that the nights you sleep best are often nights when you stopped trying. Researchers call this the paradox of effort in sleep onset. The moment of giving up trying to sleep is often the moment sleep arrives. This is not coincidence. It is mechanism. The act of trying activates the very system that prevents sleep. The act of releasing the trying deactivates it. The watchman does not ask to be defeated. He asks to be released from his duty for the night. Gently and without ceremony. There is a phenomenon clinicians call the second wind, where someone exhausted at 10 p.m. becomes wide awake at midnight. Researchers studying circadian misalignment have found that staying up past the body's natural sleep window can trigger a secondary cortisol release that re-energizes the system for hours. The body was ready. The system overruled it without meaning to. Tonight, when the first invitation to sleep comes, the kindest thing you can do for the watchman is not to argue with the offer in front of him. Researchers in heart rate variability have shown that the body's parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest, digestion, and sleep, strengthens with practice. The system becomes more responsive each time it is met with kindness rather than commands. Over time, the watchman learns that the conscious mind is not an adversary. He begins to lower the volume on his own, without being asked. The nights become quieter, not because anything was forced, but because something was finally trusted enough to soften. You may have wondered if there is a way to teach the subconscious to expect sleep at a certain hour. There is. Researchers in chronobiology have found that consistent timing of bedtime and morning light exposure, repeated over weeks, recalibrates the system more reliably than any single technique. The watchman responds to rhythm. He trusts what is predictable. Building a steady cadence is, in a real sense, a long, quiet conversation with him about what tonight will look like, and the next, and the next, and the next. There is something the subconscious learns when you spend time with it during the day, not only when you turn toward it at night. Researchers in mind-body practices have shown that brief, regular check-ins, A few minutes of conscious breathing, a moment of self-acknowledgement, a noticed feeling allowed to be present. Slowly change the system's baseline state. The watchman becomes less reactive because he is less starved for attention. He no longer has to wait for bedtime to be heard at all. Sometimes the subconscious refuses sleep because the conscious mind has been refusing rest during the day. Researchers in restorative pause have shown that the nervous system asks for micro-recoveries throughout waking hours, moments of dropping the load, even briefly. Without them, the system accumulates a deficit it tries to pay back at night. The watchman, in this case, is not preventing sleep. He is collecting on a debt the day did not honor. The remedy begins long before bedtime begins. In the small spaces, you may have noticed that the same situation that disturbed your sleep last week feels less alarming this week. Researchers in habituation and emotional processing have shown that the subconscious slowly digests what it is allowed to feel. Each time a difficult emotion is met with presence rather than avoidance, its grip loosens slightly. The watchman ages. In a way, he carries less because he has been allowed to put more down, one quiet release at a time. This work is slow, but it is the work that holds. What 75 facts now make clear is something the subconscious has been pointing at the entire time. Sleeplessness is not a malfunction of rest. It is a function of unfinished care. The watchman in you has been doing the work the day did not do. Sleep is not the absence of his work. It is what becomes possible when his work has finally been recognized. The remaining facts carry a different quality than the ones before. The science is mostly done. What remains is what the science has been quietly saying about you all along. The subconscious has a natural quieting, not silence, but the particular softness it returns to when nothing in the room and nothing inside you is asking it to be alert. Right now, as the hour deepens, that softness is finding its way back, not because you guided it, because you stopped guarding against it. The final facts tonight arrive into that quieting. They don't ask for your full attention, only your presence. We're almost there. There is a particular relief that arrives when you stop fighting the part of you that has been keeping you awake. The conflict was always using more energy than the worry itself. The body has been holding the resistance more tightly than the original concern. And once the resistance softens, what is left is much smaller than it seemed from inside the struggle of trying to fix it tonight. What looks like a stubborn mind is often a faithful one. The subconscious has been refusing to abandon its post, because no one has told it the post is safe enough to leave for tonight. Faithfulness is not the same as resistance. It is a quieter quality, and when it is recognized for what it is, it can begin, slowly, to put itself down beside you in the dark. Sleep does not ask the day to be resolved. It asks only that the day be acknowledged. There is a difference, and the body knows it. Resolution takes time the night does not have. Acknowledgement takes only a moment, and only the willingness to stop pretending that something does not deserve attention. The watchman has been waiting for that quiet moment all evening long, without complaint. The watchman is not asking you to fix everything. He is asking you to notice what he has been holding while you were busy with the rest of your life. That noticing is not a task. It is closer to a posture. the slight turning of the head, the quiet inward attention that says, "I see you there." And from that small movement, much of the night's tension begins to soften on its own. The quietest nights are not the ones without thoughts. They are the ones where the thoughts no longer feel like emergencies asking for response. The same thought, met with calm, takes up less room than the same thought, met with alarm. The mind has not been generating extra material. It has only been generating extra reaction. Tonight, the reaction can rest, and the thoughts can settle on their own. There is something that softens in the chest when you stop demanding sleep from yourself. The demand was part of what was keeping the system tight all this time. Releasing the demand does not produce sleep instantly. It simply removes one of the obstacles in sleep's way. The body recognizes the difference between effort and ease, and responds, slowly, to whichever one the room is currently asking it for tonight. The body knows how to rest. It has been doing it for as long as you have been alive. What it has been waiting for is not instruction. What it has been waiting for is permission, given quietly, without conditions, without the pressure of expectation following close behind. Permission is a small thing, but the body has been listening for it in particular. And tonight it has finally been spoken aloud where the watchman can hear it. What the subconscious has been guarding may be very old, very small, or very tired. Most of the time, all three at once. Age does not make it less alive. Smallness does not make it less worthy of care. Tiredness does not make it less faithful. The thing has earned its place in your nights. And tonight, it can finally be set somewhere safe instead of being carried any further by hands that are also tired. You are not weak for not sleeping. You were carrying something the day did not allow you to put down. Weakness and weight are different. Weight is heavier than people who do not carry it can ever quite understand. And you have been carrying yours for longer than you have been able to name it. That is not failure. That is endurance. Finally being witnessed by the one person who has felt it all along. The most caring thing the watchman ever does is finally let himself be witnessed. After that, his job becomes much smaller. He still cares. He still notices. But the urgency softens, because he is no longer the only one in the room who knows what is being held. There are two of you now, two of you, in the quiet, sharing the weight that was always meant to be shared in the first place. Sleep is not a reward for a good day. It is a return to a place inside you that exists regardless of how the day went. Regardless of what was accomplished or left undone, the day is the day. The return is the return. They are separate, and the body knows this even when the mind has forgotten. Tonight, the return is already happening, slowly, in the background of every breath. The mind that worries at night is not a different mind from the one that loves during the day. It is the same mind, doing one of its harder jobs in less favorable conditions. The same care that holds people up during daylight holds vigil at night. Loving has many shapes. Some of them look like sleeplessness. Tonight, that shape can be recognized for what it always was, and finally allowed to rest beside you. You may have spent many nights trying to make yourself sleep through willpower alone. Tonight, simple company in the dark is the work. kept gently, without expectation, beside the part of you that has been waiting longest for it. Company asks less than commanding does. Company is easier on the body, and company, given to the part of you that has been waiting for it longest, often turns into sleep on its own, without anyone giving the order. There is a particular kind of stillness that arrives when nothing inside you is being argued with. The body recognizes it before the mind does. A slight softening of the jaw, a slowing of the breath, a lowering of the shoulders that no one asked for. Stillness is not silence. It is the cessation of the inner debate. And once the debate ends, sleep finds its own way back to you. So why has the subconscious been keeping you awake? It already has its answer. To make sure that something you cared about was not forgotten in the dark of the day. The watching was never against you. It was for something you also loved. In a language the daytime never gave you time to translate. The translation is happening tonight, slowly, sentence by quiet sentence, in the room around you. And now that you have noticed what the watchman has been holding, the holding can begin to soften. Not all at once, not perfectly, only enough for tonight. The softening does not erase what was held. It only changes the grip, and a gentler grip on something cared about is what sleep has always been able to coexist with, when nothing else seemed possible at all. The system that keeps watch is not separate from you. It is one of the oldest parts of you, working in the only language it knows how to speak. Befriending that part is not betraying anything. It is gathering yourself back into a quieter agreement with the body that has been carrying you all along. The agreement is simple. The agreement is rest, given freely tonight. You did not earn this rest by trying hard enough. You arrived here by stopping in front of it with the conviction that you would fix something first. Rest is not a transaction. Rest is the body's first language. And tonight, you are letting it be spoken without interruption from the part of you that always tries to translate it into productivity, into performance, or into something you are owed only after you have earned it. What the watchman wanted was never to keep you from sleep. It was to be sure that what mattered to you was not erased by the dark or forgotten by the morning. The mattering is preserved. He has done his job. Tonight, the preservation can happen on its own, without his standing in the doorway. Some things, once witnessed, hold their own shape without anyone holding them. And tonight, in turning toward him, you have given the watchman in you something he has rarely been given, the simple acknowledgement of his existence. The thing he was guarding does not ask to be solved tonight. The thing he was waiting for has already arrived. It was you, finally arriving in the room where he has been standing, alone, for so long without complaint or relief. The body grows heavier when the inner conflict ends, not because anything has been added to it, because something has finally been released that nobody named. The release is quiet. The release is gradual. And the release does not ask for your attention to complete itself. It only asks that you stop interrupting it as it makes its slow way through your body tonight. There is no remaining task. There is only the slow descent into the place the day has been pointing at all along. Beneath everything that asked for your attention, the descent does not ask for help. It is not on a clock. It happens at its own pace, in the same body that has been ready for it for hours, in the same room where the watchman is now setting his lantern down. What you have been calling sleeplessness was, in its way, a form of devotion, a faithful kind of attention to something that did not yet have a place to be held. The devotion has done its work. The attention has done its watching. And tonight, both can finally hand over what they were holding to the quieter parts of the body that know how to keep something safe through the dark. The mind is no longer asking to be heard tonight. It has been heard. It can rest now, the way water rests when it has found its level, not by deciding to, but by no longer being held above it. The level is here. The body is here. The watchman is sitting down. And the night is, at last, exactly as quiet as it has always wanted to be. Insomnia is not the body refusing rest. It is a part of you refusing to abandon something it loved. Tonight, that part has been seen, has been thanked without words, and is finally allowed to stop standing guard. And what loves you, having been seen, can finally let you sleep into the rest that has been waiting for both of you all along. The room has been quiet for a while now. What kept you awake was never the absence of sleep. It was the presence of something that loved you enough to refuse to let what mattered slip away unattended. Let your entire being dissolve into the soft turning of a key in a lock that no longer asks to be guarded tonight. Everything that asked for holding has been held long enough. Something quiet shifts when you understand that what kept you awake was not malfunction. It was a kind of fidelity, a part of you, very old and very tired, decided long ago that there were certain things it would not let go of in the dark. It has been keeping that promise every night since. You came here tired of fighting it. You leave knowing it was never the enemy. The thing that has been waking you was the same thing that has been waiting, patiently, without complaint, for you to ask what it was holding for. And tonight, you finally asked. You did not have to take the burden from it. You only had to let it know you saw why it was carrying it. That changes the watch. That changes the night. But seeing what the watchman has been holding is only one side of the question. The other side is harder. What happens when one part of you is trying to keep you safe by doing the exact thing another part of you is trying to undo? The next video in the Subconscious Mind Reprogramming playlist begins there. You can allow these thoughts to settle now, like a lantern that has been burning all night finally being lowered. Not extinguished, just lowered enough for the rest of you to sleep. Let your body grow heavy with the weight of something you no longer have to carry alone. If sleep comes, let it carry you into the kind of rest that is not a reward, only a homecoming. But if your eyes are closed, stay there. Rest well. Sleepy souls. The watch you have been keeping was never wasted. It was only waiting to be witnessed, where science becomes the softest place to rest. Good night.